Last week I had the honour of being invited to Nintendo of Europe's headquarters to join a preview session for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. My time with the game was split up into two separate play sessions. First, 20 minutes on the same area explored by Eiji Aonuma in his gameplay demonstration, where I could get to grips with the game and with Link's new abilities. I wasn't allowed to record anything from this part, but I was able to capture footage from the next section, where I was given 50 minutes to explore a section of Hyrule, a little ways north of the Great Plateau, and the Sky Islands floating above the area. And I've been provided with some footage from Nintendo for this section of the game too. I do have to closely follow an embargo agreement with this video. I'm only allowed to show a maximum of 15 minutes of gameplay footage, and there are a few things I saw during my time with the game that I'm not yet allowed to mention, that you'll have to wait to see for yourself in a few weeks. Anything to do with the game's story was kept as secret as possible. The save files set up for me were designed to show off Link's new mechanics, and the new methods he has to explore Hyrule and defeat enemies. So don't expect anything related to the story. The tiny little bits I did see, I'm not allowed to discuss. The first section took place on this area, known as the Great Sky Island. Again, I wasn't able to capture or show any footage or screenshots from my first session. So what you're seeing on screen for this part of the video is Eiji Aonuma's gameplay demonstration from a few weeks ago, and screenshots previously published by Nintendo from this area. Even though I only explored it for 20 minutes, I got the impression that the Great Sky Island is comparable in size to Breath of the Wild's Great Plateau. Perhaps slightly smaller, but it seems even more detailed. There are tunnels and caves leading between areas, enemy construct encampments, and even friendly constructs you can talk to, like the ranger construct seen in Eiji Aonuma's gameplay session, but other types too. Like the Great Plateau, I didn't have the paraglider for this section, so I was forced to experiment with Link's main abilities to explore the area. But this isn't just the Great Plateau again, but in the sky. It's a very different experience. In Breath of the Wild, you can cross the Great Plateau in pretty much any way you want, the only real difficulties being crossing the freezing river and surviving the cold temperatures. Moving around the Great Sky Island is more difficult, but more satisfying. There are minecarts on rails that you need to attach things to with Ultra Hand to traverse some sections, and multiple opportunities to use Ascend. Of course, Fuse is always useful, and the Zonai constructs seem to use this ability quite a lot too. They're able to grab nearby objects to fuse onto their own weapons. Up here, I did also try whistle sprinting, an easy glitch in Breath of the Wild that allows for faster movement. And it's not possible in Tears of the Kingdom, so I'd expect that a lot of the original game's exploits have been fixed here too. At one point, I fought and defeated the Golem construct boss, which was called a Flux construct. It was a much bigger boss fight than I thought it would be. It made use of almost all of Link's new abilities, and took on multiple forms throughout the fight. A humanoid, a rolling box that tries to crush Link, and a flat plane, which you can ascend through. It was a really great fight, and I can imagine there are no end of different ways to defeat it. My second gameplay began in Hyrule Field, just north of Lake Kolomo. I was able to record this session, though I'll have to cut the footage up, and have been provided additional footage from Nintendo to show alongside my own gameplay. Unlike the first session, where I was just told to mess around and get to grips with the new abilities, this time I had objectives. First was accessing this tower, one of the new Sheikah towers we've seen dotted across Hyrule in this game. This one isn't as friendly as you'd expect, however. It appears to have been overrun by monsters, who now guard it like it's their stronghold. After the tower, I was told that my next objectives were above the clouds, an area known as the South Hyrule Sky Archipelago, found in the central Hyrule sky. I had to find my way first to the red map pin, then over to the green, which means covering a considerable distance of empty sky. To complete these objectives, I had to make use of the new abilities I'd practiced on the Great Sky Island, both for combat and exploration. In Tears of the Kingdom, Link's powers are accessed through a wheel. Like Sheikah runes, you can access whatever ability you have currently selected by just pressing L, but to swap between them, you need to hold L down for a second, opening this menu. By moving the right stick to select an ability, then letting go of L, Link switches to it. You'll notice that there's a new ability here you haven't seen yet. I did get to play around with this, but I'm not allowed to show you what it does or mention it by name. I can say that it isn't available from near the start of the game, like Ultra Hand, Recall, Ascend and Fuse. Instead, it's obtained later on, and it streamlines the Ultra Hand building process to make things more convenient, especially in sections of the game where you need to build a lot. So let's break this gameplay up and talk about Link's new abilities. Ultra Hand is one of the most important of Link's new powers. It works a bit like a super-powered version of Magnesis. It can be used to manipulate the environment, but works on almost anything that isn't nailed down. You can grab and throw explosive barrels, control apparatus, and, of course, build vehicles. The Ultra Hand building system really is completely free. You can glue bits together in whatever way you want. You select objects with A, then can move them closer to or further away from Link with up and down on the D-pad, just like Magnesis. But you can rotate too, by holding the R button and using the D-pad. At first, this did feel a little bit tedious, but it did click after a while. By the end of the session, I had no problems at all rotating things quickly and accurately. Once an object is in the correct place, you can glue it by pressing A again. Building with Ultra Hand doesn't just let Link piece together parts he finds lying around. He can also access them from his inventory, which now has a separate category for Zonai devices, and can drop them in front of him. You can also drop devices straight out of the materials slider menu too, accessed by pressing up on the D-pad. In Tears of the Kingdom, all Zonai technology is powered by batteries. Most of the time, this is the energy cell Link has strapped to his hip, which it seems can be upgraded throughout the game with more power. These battery meters appear whenever Zonai technology is active. Once depleted, the technology switches off, but the battery meter will recharge when not powering anything. You can also add additional batteries to Zonai machines, which will deplete before any of Link's energy cells do. Throughout my sessions, I obtained Zonai parts in different ways. Larger elements, like stone gliders or floating platforms, are just found around the world, but smaller gizmos like fans, rockets, and additional batteries are sourced from these pachinko-style machines, where, by depositing Zonai charges into the hopper, Link will receive a random assortment of Zonai parts to store in his inventory. These charges are dropped by constructs, so not only do they drop weapons and horns to fuse with, they drop an item which can be directly exchanged for vehicle parts, as well as be consumed to replenish Link's battery meter. So to reach the tower, I decided to ignore the monster camp, and built a flying machine, by gluing a balloon to a wooden board, then attaching a flamethrower, known in this game as a Zonai flame emitter, to the base, facing upwards so that the fire and hot air was propelled into the balloon. This worked. Though I didn't have any way to steer the vehicle, because I hadn't added the handlebars, they weren't necessary. It gave me enough elevation to begin sniping the stronghold's enemies. Of course, by fusing Keese eyeballs to my arrows to add homing properties and guarantee headshots, even from this distance, then paraglide to the tower. With my first objective complete, I then took to the skies, using a new method not seen before in trailers or gameplay demos that, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show here. Ultra Hand became even more important up here. Connecting Zonai parts together to create vehicles was the main way to cross the empty space between the floating islands. I was able to glide straight to my first objective, the red pin, where I put down a travel medallion in case I fell off. If you played any of the Breath of the Wild DLC, you'll recognise this item, and it returns in Tears of the Kingdom, where it functions the same way. But I was still a long way from the closest island, so I had to find a solution. Using Ultra Hand and some Zonai rockets that were conveniently lying around, I was able to transform a floating platform into a plane. I rotated the rockets and set them at a 45-degree angle, facing away from me, and stuck them on by pressing A when they were in the correct position. Like all Zonai parts, the rockets activate when struck, launching the platform into the sky. Rockets don't last forever though, they vanish before long, but the platform had enough momentum to cross the gap. These Zonai platforms are found everywhere in the sky, their gimmick being that they aren't affected by gravity. They can be moved with Ultra Hand or Zonai devices, but will come to a stop without falling. Another mode of transport on the Sky Islands was the Stone Glider. With Ultra Hand, I fastened some fans, a battery, and a set of handlebars to one, creating a proper flying machine that I had full control over. The extra battery drained before any of Link's battery packs were used, giving me quite a lot of time in the air with this thing. I tried different setups for the glider too, including attaching a rocket, which, as you can imagine, was incredible. Fuse completely changes the weapon system, which is one of the most common criticisms of Breath of the Wild. In that game, it often felt like avoiding monsters was the best move, since you'd end up breaking whatever weapons you had when fighting them. But in Tears of the Kingdom, every enemy drops at least something you can fuse to a weapon, which often makes them considerably stronger and more durable. For example, defeating a blue moblin won't just reward you with some guts and a crude club, you'll always get a blue moblin horn, which adds a pretty sizable 13 damage to whatever you fuse it to. In general, defeating monsters is a lot more rewarding in this game, like how the constructs drop Zonai charges, which I mentioned earlier. I had 2 runs through this second gameplay session, and on the second, decided to actually fight the enemies rather than gliding over them. The tower stronghold was ruled by a blue boss bokoblin with a ton of health. I didn't really have any strong weapons, so I went to my inventory, dropped a Zonai flame emitter, and fused it to a shield, creating a flamethrower, which the boss bokoblin did not like. I got him down to a tiny bit of health, fused a sapphire to an arrow to make an ice arrow, then killed myself with it. When I came back, I continued to fuse materials to make elemental arrows. It's worth noting that you do need to fuse something to your arrow every time. I don't think you can set it to fuse automatically to a material, or at least if you can, I couldn't see how. But fusing materials to arrows is a lot of fun, and can have all sorts of different effects, like fusing a muddle bud to an arrow, which confuses enemies and causes them to attack each other. You can fuse anything. I made an acorn arrow, which I don't think did anything other than add 1 extra point of damage, but it delivered the killing blow anyway. As you'd expect for a boss bokoblin, it dropped bigger, stronger versions of the materials dropped by its smaller kin, like boss bokoblin fangs and a blue boss bokoblin horn, which has a fuse attack power of 16. Ultra Hand is used to manipulate and traverse the environment, while Fuse seems to be used primarily for combat. You can attach literally any material you have to your arrows, for example, or glue almost anything in the surrounding environment to your weapons and shields. But it's also important outside of combat, like attaching a Zonai rocket to a weapon or shield, then using it to launch Link into the sky. Compared to Ultra Hand or Fuse, I didn't have as many opportunities to use Recall. Of course, we've seen it used to reverse the momentum of falling chunks of Sky Island, which Link can ride back up, but it can also be used to reverse the movement of your own Zonai vehicles. I used Recall on the platform I launched with rockets, which sent it all the way back down to the island it started on. But Recall also has applications in combat. For example, at the top of the Stronghold's bridge, a group of bokoblins have set a trap, and will roll a spiked ball down at you. Link can reverse this with Recall, sending the ball rolling back towards the enemy camp. At one point, I faced a Zonai construct on a floating platform, who tried to snipe me with arrows fused with rockets. I tried to use Recall on a rocket to send it back at the construct, but unfortunately it doesn't look like this is possible, so I opted to send my own rocket back with the bow. It's also used in puzzle solving, like here, to reverse the closing of a small pond's drainage gate and allow Link time to get to a chest at the bottom. Ascend lets Link jump through ceilings and emerge on the other side. This is the ability I used the least during my gameplay sessions, though it wasn't useless. There is a height limit on this ability. Here, it wouldn't allow me to ascend to the higher parts of the bridge, only the lower end away from the tower. Notably, time freezes while Link pops his head out of the floor after using this ability, giving you time to assess the surroundings and make a plan. Like how Fuse completely revolutionizes Breath of the Wild's weapon system, Ascend makes vertical exploration much simpler. Instead of climbing up mountains, it's possible to skip this entirely with this new ability. I can imagine Ascend having a lot of applications throughout the game, like fighting the Flux constructs, but my gameplay sessions didn't call for it too much. With Link's main abilities covered, let's talk about my overall experience with the game, as well as any little details that aren't specifically about his moveset. First, Koroks are back. Actual Korok puzzles, just like Breath of the Wild, which reward Link with Korok seeds just the same. If there's another 900 of them, let's hope there's a better reward this time around. Tears of the Kingdom's combat, unsurprisingly, works in a very similar way to Breath of the Wild, including the return of abilities like Flurry Rush, where avoiding an attack at the last second will slow time, allowing Link to counter. But the additions of Fuse, both to arrows and to Link's equipment, adds an entire new dimension to combat. As I mentioned earlier, it's far more rewarding here. The drops give you a reason to want to defeat every enemy you see, but also make the combat more creative and wacky than ever. You can do things like fuse an explosive barrel to your shield, which will blow up whatever enemy hits it, but keep Link safe behind the shield. If you were a fan of the original game's sandbox style of combat, where you were rewarded for coming up with inventive ways to destroy your foes, then you'll absolutely love combat in this sequel. Zonai devices aren't just used for Ultra Hand building. I mentioned earlier fusing rockets to equipment to give Link some airtime, but another brilliant little Zonai contraption is the portable pot, which acts as a cooking pot, allowing Link to rustle up some food wherever he is, but only lasts for one meal, before disappearing. My gameplay sessions took place relatively early on in the game, so I'm sure there'll be an incredible amount of ingenious Zonai tech to play around with. At first, the game feels like Breath of the Wild, with a bigger world and a whole new box of toys, but it's more than that. We've got a massively expanded world to adventure through, and an exponentially higher number of ways to explore it. I've played a lot of Breath of the Wild over the past 6 years, and even though the sequel is set in the same Hyrule, with the same Link, this is a very different game. It's something that I had to get to grips with when I played it. It was easy to play this like it's the original game. But Link is much more powerful here. He's able to move around the world and control his immediate environment in ways that weren't even close to possible in Breath of the Wild. Ultra Hand and Fuse together mean that Link can interact with the world around him in so many different ways. It probably goes without saying, but Tears of the Kingdom is every bit as good as I hoped it would be. It manages to perfectly tread the line between being a sequel to one of the best games of recent times and being something completely fresh and unique on its own merit. Even in gameplay sessions where the story was obscured, Link's new abilities alone are enough to make this game feel like a truly unique experience, something above just more Breath of the Wild. I only got a very limited look at what this game has to offer, but I'm more than confident enough to say that this game is worthy of the amount of hype and speculation surrounding it. I don't think any Zelda fan doubted it, but Nintendo have made something special once again. Thanks for watching this video, and of course a huge thank you to the teams at both Nintendo UK and Nintendo of Europe for organising and inviting me to this event. There's only a little over 2 weeks now until Tears of the Kingdom releases. On May 12th, we'll all be exploring Hyrule's skies and uncovering its mysteries, and I can't wait. If you like this video, leave a like, or subscribe if you haven't already for more Tears of the Kingdom content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.